Hi, everyone. We're excited to share our presentation, Cultivating Student Resilience, an online holistic self-care course. In this session, we'll walk through why the need for a dedicated self-care course, how the course was designed to support stress regulation and resilience, and what we learned from student outcomes and feedback. I'm Rita Carroll, and I'm presenting with my colleagues, Donna Fahey, Melanie Henderson, Jackie Murphy, and Dixie Schexnaildre. We're from Drexel University in Philadelphia, and we each played a role in the development, teaching, and evaluation of this online holistic self-care course, and we'll bring those perspectives into today's presentation. By the end of this presentation, we hope you'll be able to do three things. First, describe key online course design elements that can reduce stress and support resilience. Second, identify evidence-informed experiential strategies that promote student well-being in the online learning environment. And third, leave with at least one practical, adaptable self-care design strategy you can apply in your own courses. Now I'll turn things over to Donna as she shares why this kind of course matters.
Before we talk about course design, before we share strategies, before we discuss data, we wanted to begin with a simple observation. Our students are tired, not unmotivated, not incapable, not disengaged by choice, tired. Tired from navigating academic rigor in an increasingly complex world, tired from balancing work, family, financial strain, and performance pressures. Tired from the constant hum of comparison and digital overload. Across our courses, we are seeing elevated stress, anxiety, burnout among college students. We see it in perfectionism, in procrastination, in silence, in late night emails, in students who appear capable but overwhelmed. Stress is shaping the learning experience itself. Academic stress, in particular, continues to be one of the most significant contributors to student distress, and high levels of stress during college is a predictor of future mental health challenges. Stress is the body's natural response to any real or perceived pressure that threatens the homeostatic state. Academic stress is a psychological state resulting from continuous social and self-imposed pressures in a school environment that deplete a student's psychological reserves. And when those reserves are depleted, cognition narrows, creativity shrinks, memory suffers, motivation falters. Stress directly interferes with learning. Students report feeling disconnected, gravitating towards unhealthy coping, risk behaviors, withdrawal, social isolation. We cannot meaningfully separate academic performance from emotional regulation. They are interdependent. It is cyclical. Increased academic stress leads to worsening mental well-being, which has shown to exacerbate academic stress. Now let's layer in online learning. Online education is powerful. It expands access. It offers flexibility. But, especially in asynchronous formats, it can also amplify stressors like isolation, ambiguity, blurred boundaries between home and school, cognitive overload from poorly structured content, limited real-time reassurance. Research on online engagement consistently emphasizes the importance of connection, modeling, and meaningful interaction for motivation and satisfaction. When those elements are missing, stress intensifies. But here is the turning point. Online environments do not have to amplify stress. They can be intentionally designed to buffer it. Higher education has traditionally centered on intellectual growth, but students do not arrive as intellect alone. They arrive as whole human beings, mind, body, emotion, culture, and environment. What if a course itself could become a stabilizing structure? What if it could reduce uncertainty rather than add to it? What if it could teach students how to regulate stress, not just survive it? Can we provide a pathway to promote a human-centered learning experience to help students build resilience, reframe challenges, and prepare the next generation with lifelong skills to address the complexities and challenges of life after graduation. Stress may be inevitable, but resilience is developmental. It can be cultivated through intentional course design. This is where pedagogy and well-being intersect. I invite you to pause for a moment. Think about the students you teach. Where do you see stress showing up most clearly? Is it during exams, in discussion boards, in incomplete assignments, in emails that begin with an apology? Take a moment and write one way student stress manifests in your courses. Pause the recording if you need to, and hold that example in mind.
So as we envisioned this holistic self-care course, the overall purpose of the course was to help reduce student stress and promote overall well-being. As was stated a few slides ago, our students are tired and stressed. How do we help them give the tools to manage their stress? We wanted a course that could go beyond the student's academic experience to support a holistic, balanced student life. As was previously stated, stress in college is a predictor of future mental health challenges. As nursing students have been known to experience great levels of stress, we wanted this course to give nursing students a holistic self-care toolkit to take beyond university life. The course was initially developed for nursing students, and it was later made available to all students once the value of the course was realized by faculty and by students. Word about the course was spreading to non-nursing majors. The overall course structure is that it's an asynchronous, fully online 10-week course organized into 5 modules, each 2 weeks in length. This format of the course allowed for a consistent pattern to instill familiarity and minimize uncertainty in the student. It combined evidence-based learning with applied self-care practices to cultivate self-efficacy and strengthen the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit. So let's take a look at the holistic self-care course description. The core components of the course were a didactic content paired with experiential learning and reflection. Didactic learning is useful for increasing knowledge, but experiential learning is essential when we're trying to affect health behaviors. In this case, increasing self-care activities. So learning through doing and reflection helps to increase student autonomy and responsibility. Experiential learning includes a connection between content theory and the experience, in this case, the holistic practice, which reinforces the student's personal involvement in their learning process. The module topics included stress management, mindfulness and meditation, nutrition for self-care, spirituality and movement, and self-efficacy and a positive mindset. Signature course assignments within each module included interactive discussions, experiential journals, and quizzes or knowledge checks. And overall, there was a comprehensive experiential project that required students to choose a holistic self-care practice, research the benefits thoroughly through scholarly articles, practice it for multiple weeks, and then finally share an in-depth reflection. The course instructors who taught the course were experienced in holistic practices such as yoga, mindfulness meditation, aromatherapy, and other holistic practices. Let's take a look at some of the holistic self-care course activities. The course activities were designed to support stress management and increase resilience in students. The activities were student-centered and allowed for the personal involvement in the student's learning process. They were selected with purpose and intention. There was predictability and clarity via the consistency and the structure of the course, and transparent instructions in the discussions and journals and other assignments. Autonomy and choice were promoted through options in the topics, the self-care practices, and in how students creatively presented their comprehensive project. Students were able to choose whether they wanted to write a formal research paper, create a visual presentation with a voiceover, or use other media. There were boundaries established through cognitive reframing and values-centered engagement between the students and between the student and the instructor. There were structured discussion prompts that promoted peer interaction that was safe and manageable. Experiential journals allowed for a safe space to reflect on the practices, such as meditations or body scans, and they were reserved for only a single student to instructor interaction. The micro practices allowed students to learn small, repeatable actions that they could realistically sustain throughout the course and beyond. and instructor feedback was personalized and encouraging. So as we look at reflection point number 2, I ask you to pause and reflect. What might students need in a self-care course to support stress management and increase resilience and overall well-being? Take a moment to write down what you think your students may need. Or place yourself in the shoes of today's student. As was shared earlier, they are tired and overwhelmed. They're not disengaged. You could also reflect upon your own personal university experience. What course components would you find most helpful and supportive to you?
To contextualize the design and outcomes, we'll first take a brief look at the integrative student growth model. Our study was a concurrent mixed methods design, and it was guided by the Integrative Student Growth Model, or ISGM. This model is helpful because it treats self-care and resilience as part of student success, not as extras. It assumes students can learn skills for managing stress, strengthening mental health, and building resilience over time, especially when the learning environment supports that growth. The ISGM gave us both a conceptual foundation and a practical guide for how this course could be structured, taught, and evaluated. Holism is at the center of the course design and model, and in higher education that means we're looking at the totality of the student experience. That includes mind, body, spirit, environment, and culture, and bringing that understanding into both the learning environment and the teaching and learning process. It's not an abstract idea, but a practical one that supports academic performance, professional growth, and personal wellness. The ISGM is intentionally focused on the whole student. It recognizes that students' physical health, emotions, relationships, and cognitive demands all show up in learning, and they matter. The ISGM also helped us think very concretely about what the course needed to do. It highlights student growth through practices that help students manage stress, maintain mental health, and build resilience. It also emphasizes that growth is holistic and inclusive. So in our course design, we weren't just delivering content about self-care, we were creating a supportive learning environment that encourages students to actually practice skills, reflect on them, and gradually integrate them. That balance of rigor, self-care, and professional growth is central to the ISGM and to our approach to the course. That theory then leads directly to our research questions. Guided by the ISGM, we asked 3 straightforward things. First, do students' self-reported stress and resilience change from before to after completing this 10-week, 4-credit online holistic self-care course? Then, are stress and resilience related to one another in our sample? And finally, how do students describe their experiences of learning holistic self-care in an online course? Those questions let us look at outcomes, relationships between key variables, and the student voice, all through a whole person framework. So let's take a brief pause for another reflection. You can stop the video if you'd like, but please, as you go forward, keep your response in mind as Jackie next shares the research study design and findings.
With that model in mind, we designed a study to examine whether a 10-week holistic self-care course could enhance the very capacities that support resilience and growth. This study used a concurrent mixed methods design. At the start of the course, students completed a pre-survey measuring perceived stress and resilience. They then participated in a 10-week, fully asynchronous online holistic self-care course. At the end of the course, students completed a post-survey measuring stress and resilience again, and they provided qualitative reflections about their experience. We analyzed the quantitative data using paired t-tests and Pearson correlations, and we used thematic coding to examine the qualitative responses. Finally, we triangulated the findings to better understand not only whether the change occurred, but how students experienced that change. So quantitatively, we observed a statistically significant decrease in perceived stress with a medium to large effect size. We also found a statistically significant increase in resilience. Importantly, stress and resilience were negatively correlated. So as resilience increased, levels of perceived stress decreased. But these numbers only tell part of the story. We conducted 2-cycle coding, and several themes emerged from the students' qualitative responses. First, students described developing concrete stress management skills. Many shared that they left the course with specific, practical strategies to cope with stress. Second, students reported an overall decrease in stress. While they acknowledged that stress comes in waves, they consistently noted that the techniques they learned helped them to manage their stress better. Third, students described a meaningful shift in mindset. They moved away from perfectionism toward viewing learning as a process, one that includes challenges they are capable of navigating. They also described learning to accept what they cannot control. And finally, students explicitly described an increase in resilience. So as I noted, they recognize that stress is inevitable, that it does come in waves, but reported recovering more quickly from stressful experiences and approaching problems more constructively. So overall, students didn't just experience a decrease in stress. They changed how they respond to it. And now I'm going to pass it to Dixie, who will share specific comments that bring these themes to life.
While the aggregated thematic findings related to stress management strategies, decreased levels of stress, mindset shifts, and increased resilience are already encouraging, it's the impact of the course on the human behind each student number that really matters. Students were able to identify specific changed behavioral patterns in response to stress cues after taking our course. One student reported, "I step away from my work for a minute and focus on breathing." This is encouraging, as intentional, rhythmic breathwork practices can alter activity in several areas of the brain and body, therefore may serve as protective health tools. More so, the breath is a free tool that is always with us. This means that students of every socioeconomic status walk away from our course with practical tools that can support them over their lifetime as needed. One respondent noted, I quote, "I feel less stressed and more equipped to handle stress." This suggests that our set of learning activities contributes to student empowerment. There's evidence that our students are able to engage in cognitive reframing of challenges after time in our course. One student shared, "I've learned to accept that all I can do is the best that I can do and not become hung up on the little things." This response is indicative of a growth mindset, which Dweck has researched extensively, and it matters for learning. Another student response, "I am able to get myself centered quickly as a result of taking this course," is a powerful indicator of an increase in their resilience. While we aim to avoid pedagogies that distress students, we do want students to experience the eustress, or that positive motivating stress that can support learning, as noted by Flinchbaugh et al. In 2023. Challenging students to try new practices, but within a safe space and in bite-sized offerings, with options for meeting students' preferences, cultural values, and unique needs, allows them to feel that good stress that can come from the anticipation and excitement of rising to a new challenge, without adding to the negative stress load that the student may be facing. To respect the unique cultural factors, family norms, belief systems, religious and spiritual ideologies, complex layered identities, and lived experiences that each student brings to our space, we encourage them to share cultural and experiential insights and wisdom on our discussion board, with discussion practice parameters in place that foster respect. While exploring contemplative practices, such as meditation and yoga, we offer flexibility in our requirements. For example, we say, those who are trying yoga for the first time, consider trying video tutorial X. Those with experience, select from this other set of recommended options. And by presenting materials that feature diverse voices, we break pervasive wellness myths here in the West, such as the misconception that a yoga practitioner must be a flexible, thin-bodied female to do yoga effectively or right. After all, as Krishnamacharya, often referred to as the father of modern yoga, is thought to have said, there is a right yoga for every person. If you can breathe, you can do yoga. Therefore, our practices are accessible to all, including students with physical disabilities, invisible disabilities, and information or sensory processing differences. We offer choice in the use of our tools, even with practices such as applying essential oils or exploring essential oils. We teach students to be mindful of potential necessary adaptations for allergies, preferences, how to use oils when you're in a shared space, or when living with pets. We encourage exploration of supportive technologies, as many students will have their cell phones on them. One of those recommendations is downloading the Smiling Mind app, which offers guided meditations so students can use these tools whenever they find themselves in need, wherever they are. Some students will use the tool for a week. Others will continue to leverage these options long after the assigned tasks are complete, as noted in journal submissions and final course projects. As a teacher of this course, I downloaded the Smiling Mind app years ago, and I'm still using it to this day. And to that point, future studies might consider exploring the impact of teaching this course on markers of instructor well-being. Collecting more objective measures from participants, such as low-cost, non-invasive biomarker changes like blood pressure before and after practices are implemented, or heart rate or respiratory rate changes, could offer valuable data as well. Future studies might aim to include greater demographic and academic program diversity. For example, comparing outcomes for students from engineering programs versus nursing versus fashion or legal studies might hint to certain characteristics that are most effective. We also recognize that there are potential confounders that may play a role in outcomes, such as timing of data collection. Our study gathered post-course data during the time of each term when finals were occurring, which could skew results. Research comparing results across different academic terms and between institutions could also provide valuable insights into how context influences the effectiveness of holistic self-care education in the higher ed space. What impact would you expect such a course to have on students in your institution? Now I'll turn the mic back over to my colleague Rita for some closing thoughts and considerations.
As we close, let's do a quick summary of the rationale, the ingredients, and the impact of this course. First, the why. Student stress is everywhere, and resilience is something we can teach. A dedicated self-care course is a student success strategy with benefits that extend beyond graduation. Also, the ingredients, including a predictable rhythm, a balance of content with experiential practice and reflection, and a whole person lens. And third, why it works. There's no single magic technique. Offering a variety of practices and meaningful choices lets students build a personal toolkit, which strengthens coping and self-efficacy. In our study, that showed up as lower perceived stress and higher resilience. So as we finish up, let's pause for reflection one more time to consider an application of the findings. So please take a few moments, turn off the video if you like, to consider how you can use the information we presented today. What is one thing that you could add to a current course to help students build stress management and resilience skills? Thanks so much for spending time with us. You can reach out to me, Rita Carroll, about the study or the course. My email address below. And here are our references. Thanks and have a great day.